Hey, welcome everybody. I am so excited to be here for another, our third Behind the Brand. And this again is based upon the report that was put out in conjunction with Leadtail. I'll walk you through that in just a second. But first of all, I wanted to welcome our guests. I have two awesome guests today, and I'm really excited to hear from them on the topic, which today is brand ambassadors. And we are going to be talking with Michaela Stribling, who is the Social Business Program Director at IBM. Michaela is a good friend and has been for quite a while, so I'm excited to be here with Michaela. She has a passion for people and deep organizational experience in the trenches of the Valley's most fabled companies. I think we have a couple companies that y'all would know and that she has worked with. And she's also a natural fit for social business leadership, which is what she does at IBM. So welcome, Michaela.
Thank you so much.
And we also have Frank, Frank, I'm going to say your name wrong, I know it. Frank Eliason.
You got it.
Thank you. Woo! I always ask people to say their names for me before I start, and I didn't do that this time, but sounds like a guy got
I used to work for the big cable company. I've been called all kinds of names.
And we are going to talk about that. So Frank is the director of global client, I think, services, or social
client,
media.
It's customer experience, really. I've made a shift to a different role.
Great. Well, I'm sure that'll play in very well into what we're talking about here. Frank, it helped to usher in the era of social customer service at Comcast and continues to advocate for better customer service in his current role at Citi. So welcome, Frank, and I appreciate you being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. I figure we'll have a good time.
And we will. We already off camera. We're having a great time, so I have no doubt. I am really excited about today's topic. First of all, before I start, I want to let you know that there is a tweet chat going on. Our handle at Pure Matter is running it, and that's Susie who's running the handle. I'm sure everyone knows Susie by now, and if you don't, you need to get to know her. She is a ball of energy, and I'm not kidding. You also can participate by using the hashtag PMSubstance, PM Pure Matter Substance, PM Substance, and that will help us because the first 30 minutes I'm going to ask questions of my great guests here, and the last 30 minutes you are going to ask the questions. So I will be fed questions from Susie and/or I'll be watching on Twitter, and we're going to take your questions and ask our great guests here what you would like to ask them. So it's definitely a very participatory, say that 3 times, hour. And I'm going to dive right in. So first of all, let me thank Leadtail for helping to build this this report. The report was really built on different sections of what makes a social influencer an influencer, what makes a brand champion a brand champion. And the people that were picked were based upon data that was collected. And that data really surmounted. It really got us to a point where we were collecting a lot. We got to the point where we're collecting over 22,642 tweets that came in, and then out of that, the links that were shared from these people were 9,413 people. I'm going to take just a quick moment and let you know I am at an airport, and people are talking overhead. So if you hear people calling numbers and airlines, that's where I'm at. I'm in Colorado talking to you live. Here at the Denver airport. So excited to be here, but I just want to let you know if you hear people, that's what it is. Okay, so then I wanted to break that down even further. There was 3,554 unique hashtags that were used out of the 30 executives that were reported, over 8,070 mentions, and 2,589 retweets happened out of the time that we analyzed the data, which took place over between January 1st and January 30th of 2014. So taking all of that data, Leadtail and Pure Matter then categorized everyone into into buckets based upon their shares. And who you're talking to today are the brand champions. These people are champions of their own brands and have an affinity for things like customer advocacy, customer care, and employee advocacy. So let's get started, and let me throw a question out to you two. Michaela, I'm going to start with you. Let's start with your definition of a brand ambassador. How do you see a brand ambassador shaping up?
Well, I think that's a great question, Brian. So thanks for that. I think a brand champion is somebody who has a real and emotional connection with a brand. It can be with a product. You know, if you think about it, I'm willing to bet that most people have deep relationships with brands that they love. It can be the car that you drive every day. Do you love your car? Are you a champion of that car brand? I know there are brands that I absolutely adore because they go the extra mile for me. For example, I really like brands like Sephora because they take care of me. You know, it's my birthday, they give me a treat. I have a question, they answer it right away. And so I've always been very vocal about what a fantastic brand that they are. But I also work for a great brand. You know, I work for IBM, and I'm proud to work for IBM. I think the IBM brand is a phenomenal brand, and it's made up of interesting people. And actually, the whole notion of brand champion gets back to something that we believe very strongly, and that is that the IBM brand is best experienced through its people. Now let that sink in for just a moment. It's not about, you know, only terrific products and services. It's about the people. We think our people are special, and that means that every single person who works for IBM, every IBMer, and Frank, I love your T-shirt, your sweatshirt.
And if you can get me another one that's my favorite and doesn't fit anymore, but I had to wear it today.
Well, we'll talk afterward. But you know, it really, you have an opportunity with your employees. The moment you believe that your employees are special and a unique embodiment of the brand, they have the opportunity to be brand champions for you. That's my belief.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Frank, how about yourself?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I never viewed myself as a brand champion. I always viewed myself as a customer champion, a champion of employees. But ultimately, it does come down to when you exude that, you do become the brand champion in many ways. You know, people over the years have told me, "Oh, I want to become an influencer. I want to do this." I never sought any of that. I'd rather be under a rock somewhere. But ultimately, I do want to create the right experiences. I'll also tell you a quick story. People have always asked me, why did I leave Comcast where I had a great experience and, you know, obviously just a really good job, to go to Citibank at a time where it was a little struggle for the banking industry. And I went there because two factors. Number one, at the time they had a CMO, and I never saw myself working in marketing, who truly loved the brand and wanted to drive change in the culture to be about the customer experience. And that's what we've been working on for years. So to me, that's special. And you know, at the end of the day, if you do those things, your customers become your champions. But it does take time. The other reason that I went, though, was I was talking to someone, and they, actually a relative, and when I was asking them their opinions of Citi as well as actually another job offer, and one of the things they said to me was, over the years they've taken their picture around the globe at different Citi offices, and I thought that's a little odd. You grew up in an area where there was not a Citibank at all, yet you're doing this. Why would you do such a thing?
Like selfies?
Selfies in front of Citibank signs. Honest. And you know what it was? To her, Citi was America. It was, you know, it was apple pie. It was, and she was so proud to see that when she would travel in all these different countries. You know what? Citi is a fabulous brand that's been around for 200 years. And it's exciting to see the changes that we've done over the past few years, and also more excited to where we're going. And so that's why I'm there, and that's why there's 250,000 of us who are really representing this brand, but really driving a different experience and a different way of thinking in banking.
Oh wow, that's great. You guys obviously were picked for the right reasons, because you are absolutely brand champions of your own brand by example of both of what you just said. So let's move into employee advocacy. There's so many different ways being brand champions. You know, as you both kind of just stated, it happens from the inside out, and what I'm curious about is, how do you view employee advocacy? Because at the end of the day, it helps people to become better brand champions. But how do you view that within your own roles? Michaela, do you want to take that first?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, you know, at IBM, we really believe that the IBM brand is best experienced through IBMers. And that means that, you know, we think of advocacy, we think of champions, we think of IBMers showing up as IBMers as really intrinsic to everything we do. So, for example, a few years ago, I loved the IBM commercials that actually featured an IBMer and ended with "I'm an IBMer," because to me that really spoke to the pride that the company takes in the people it hires, and the stories that the people tell. And Brian, you were part of TED at IBM, which was a collaboration between TED and IBM to bring amazing stories to the fore and to tell the stories that humanize the brand. I'm waiting. Human.
I almost missed it. How did I almost miss that?
There you go. So the stories that really humanize the brand, and you know, that demonstrate that that there are tremendous stories within IBM. And to me, that gets again to the heart of advocacy. That, you know, so long as you're hiring fantastic people, and so long as those people have networks, and we all have networks, then why would you not empower them to go out there and talk about the brand? They're going to do it anyway. So what you need to do is to figure out how to give them the tools to basically help people write a series of love letters about your brand. That's really what it's all about. And when I think about that, I really mean people are talking about your brand, people are sharing content about the brand, people are bringing back feedback. So to me, being an advocate and being a champion does not mean that you're a Pollyanna and every morning saying this is the best thing ever and we're never going to change it. It actually means that sometimes you need to be the one to say, to be a catalyst for change, to the betterment of your customers and to the experience that they're going to have with the brand. So I see this as nothing but a virtuous cycle.
And you guys use employee advocacy quite a bit. I'm aware.
Yeah.
And you use that. I think you touched on it as an employee advocacy network, but you also use it for influence as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, we use it. We use advocacy in many, many different ways, both internally. So you want to know what's going on. You know, odds are very, very good that you'll hear something from a fellow IBMer. And you can learn about interesting things happening through IBM advocates within IBM, which to me is very interesting. We've got a community internally that's very, very active. We have a community externally that's very active. And we bring influencers into that community and we drive conversation in a real and authentic fashion.
Yeah. Frank, how about yourself? How do you view employee advocacy yourself and at Citi? What's kind of your methodology around that?
Well, first of all, it's imperative, but I would say it's also sometimes a challenge. You know, the Citi, like many banks, is a brand that's been around for a long time, fairly conservative in many ways. You know, in the financial regulatory environment, what do? We can't say, you can't speak in social media, you can't do this or you can't do that. So it's changing a mindset around everybody and getting them to understand the benefits of having your employees talk about their experiences, doing so in a very humanizing way. One of the challenges to the big one of the challenges to the big banks is they during the crisis they didn't appear human, and the fact is, all right, now I have to be careful about that. You have to expect
I won't do it again on you. I'm not going to do it again to you.
But I think they would have been much better off by bringing them out at that point. So I think there's a responsibility we have as brand advocates in showing our companies what can be done and how it can be done, and it's safe to be done. Trust in me. I'm not going to steer it wrong. I'll have my own personal views and I'll express those. But but believe in me. And I think the more the company sees that, the more they then open up to other people and other things. I'll tell you a quick story that's actually quite funny about advocacy and doing things a little differently. A few years ago, I was speaking at an event called PivotCon in New York, and at the day before the event, a video went viral about the company I work for. And it was saying that we were having people arrested for trying to close their accounts.
And were you?
Let me be very clear, no, we weren't. But, at the time, it wasn't our way of really talking about those things. But it was quite funny because the next morning I was scheduled to be on stage. What do you do about this? This video was just, watched by hundreds of thousands of people. And I was in a meeting that morning, and I said, look, let me do everybody a favor. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go on stage. I'm going to play this video. Let me do this. Everybody seemed to agree in the meeting. I will tell you, after I did it, they didn't necessarily say they agree, but that's a whole other conversation. So I play the video. And then I immediately played another video, by the way, by the same exact people who did the first video. And it was showing really what was going on in the branch. And it was not Citi doing these things. It was basically people took over our branch as a protest. And, as I presented this video to the crowd, I said, look, you know what? There's things they're talking about that I fully agree with. Do I think that, student loan rates and whatnot, that's a challenge? Yeah, because I think student, cost of education is way too high. That's not something we control at Citi. In fact, we don't even control the loan rates. That's all regulated. But yes, the cost of education, too much. I agree with them. We as a society need to deal with that. Do I think that's a Citi issue? No, I think it's a societal issue. And then I went on. There's about 5 different points, and I actually agreed with the majority of their points. And so I presented this on stage. Immediately, this video that was still going viral before I started died. And then people in the audience started actually going out and saying, wait a second, there's more to this story. And they went and found the video I shared and started sharing that. I didn't do any of that. I didn't do it online. I just did it on stage. But the audience did it for me. And so it's a different way of thinking, and it's a much more open way of thinking. It's challenging for if you work for a company that's been around for a long time, it's going to be a challenge. But if you do it methodically, you do it carefully, you teach them as they go along, they will move along with you. And I will say today we are much more open of a company. We are much more encouraging of employees to advocate for us and to be out there and be themselves. What a great thing to have 300,000, 250, 300,000 people advocating for you and humanizing your brand throughout the web. I not only want them to do it on the web, I want them to do it in person. It's one of the neatest parts about working for such a diverse organization. Showing that diversity is so unique. I've never been in a place where I'm working with people around the globe speaking different languages and working together for a common goal. That, to me, is exciting.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I agree. I was. This is going off topic just a little bit, but I was on Twitter last night, and I was actually I was. It was really interesting because this lady tweeted out to me, and she said, "I just picked up Human to Human, H to H. I'm really excited to read this with a link to the book." but she said it, and then she reset it in Italian, and it was in another. And she was in Italy, and I clicked the link, and it went over to this website, and the website was an online distribution book network that I had not given my book to, so they were selling my book. And I'm telling you, I'm not getting the royalties because I know I'm not getting the royalties from them. And I tweeted back and said, I'm so sorry, but I didn't actually give them my book to be distributed there. And they got so many tweets and so much advocacy around that that they ended up taking the book down on the site. Here I thought I was going to wake up this morning and be on the phone with my lawyer. But then the advocacy network, or what, you know, the tweets around that actually helped me overnight to get a book taken down on the site, and I was just blown away. I didn't realize the power of my tweet could or power of advocacy could really help me. So I'm completely agree, and talk about global, right? I have no reach into Italy to be able to tell. I should have called Michaela, because I think you can speak a little Italian and probably could have helped me a little bit on that.
Absolutely. Next time.
So let's talk about how do you look at and measure influence and measure advocacy? What is a good way to approach this from an executive level? It's looking for the benefits. Michaela, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I'll start by saying that is a really hard question, and it's one that's ever evolving. And I think we all feel the pressure. You know, let me start by saying I agree with Ted Rubin when he says there's value in relationships. Relationships mean something. So the fact that people are out there talking about your brand is worth something. But I also think that when you're talking to executives, you need to go in with more data. You know, and I work for a company that says, you know, we believe that data is the great natural resource of our age. And so that means we need to sort of live by those words and make sure that we're using data. But I'll turn the question around a little bit, and I will refer back to something that Susan Ettlinger said a few years back with regard to social media measurement. And her point was, rather than thinking about sort of social media programs in general, advocacy being one of them, you should actually think about what your strategic intention is from the outset. So whatever it is you're trying to do, think about what you want to measure as your end goal. So an example, and Frank, this probably applies to you given your background at Comcast. So if you're using Twitter to resolve customer issues, then maybe one very hard and fast measure is whether there's been a decrease in call center calls. Can you look at something like that, a signal like that, to tie it back to your programs and say, it's working, and here's how we know it's working, we can quantify it. So I do think that there's pressure on all of us to think hard about the measurements that we bring into the boardroom every day. I think that the measurements that worked yesterday will not work tomorrow. And I think that, you know, again, at the end of the day, it's about what your program is trying to do, not about a blanket approach to applying, you know, this KPI because I used it last month and I know it works. It's about, you know, what you're trying to achieve. So I'll give you another example that's near and dear to my heart. Last year, we started experimenting with a newsroom approach to content at IBM. And I love this program. I love it because it empowers us to tell the stories that we think are worth telling. But how do you measure, you know, readership? And even if you measure readership and engagement and, you know, impressions and influence, how do you measure the impact of the business? Well, in my case, as we were building out the case for launching a newsroom approach to content, last Valentine's Day, that is to say in 2014, we did a Valentine's Day campaign, a very small campaign targeted to 60 influencers. That's it. 20 were external, 20 were IBMers, and 20 were brand champions within our cohort of clients. And we sent them out cards, digital cards that said things like, for you, we need more than 140 characters. Thank you for everything you do for IBM or what have you. There was no link to IBM content. There was no call to action. It was merely a thank you. And that little campaign went supernova for us. The impressions were phenomenal. And it served a business need for our little group, because what it showed was that with 60 little tweets, 60 tweets, we could get tremendous engagement from people who matter to the brand. And the feedback we got publicly on social media was along the lines of, IBM, I've never responded to any tweet from you, but this is phenomenal. You've really humanized the brand, and you've touched my heart. And that was worth something to us. Oh, I think you're muted, Brian.
You're muted.
No, I was just messing with you guys. No, I'm kidding. I was messing with myself. I was a recipient of one of those, and I can honestly say that it did. It came out of left field. I never expected a personal tweet from IBM like that, and to customize to take time to customize an individual message to a person. It's just hardly done, and so I completely agree, and great that was it, so that actual example is now making it into my book. I absolutely love that campaign. So congrats and thank you for doing that. Frank, how about yourself?
Oh, I believe that you should be measuring likes and followers and no, just kidding. Sorry. Ultimately, I think she covered it. You have to cover whatever you're striving to do. And it has to be, what is your business goals? I'm going to drift to service stuff, for example, because it's stuff I talk about all the time. My view on service is you're taking this information, you need to do something with it. Not only do you want to help the customer, you can measure your impact on the customer, you can measure their buying, their habits going forward, but beyond that, what are you doing with this data? Are you fixing processes? Are you changing things? So, companies love to say they're listening. And if they truly were listening, we probably wouldn't hear this ROI conversation all the time, because they would actually have the ROI from all the things they were doing with what they're listening. So the reality is they're not really listening. They're waiting for the next PR crisis. What is your goal? If you're talking advocacy, what is it driving? Is it driving behaviors of your customers? Are you watching your results, your NPS results, if you measure those? Are you watching them increase? Are you watching the amount of people talking about you and talking about their great experiences increasing? These are easy things that you could do with existing data sets. And they also make pretty graphs if you're all about pretty graphs. But it tells a story that's business-oriented goals. And that is where it's all at. And, that's where, even when you get into content, it's, I personally believe most companies get content all wrong. They concentrate so much on, look at how great our products are, we're wonderful, as opposed to adding value to their audience. Mm-hmm. And you add value to your audience, people come back to you. They see you as, the place I want to get that insight from. And I think that's a struggle where we're at right now in social media. I think most businesses have really messed up social media, mainly because, oh God, it's going to chime. I'm trying to think of a different word. I can't. They're not understanding the human aspects of social media. And the next time I come on, Brian, I'm thinking of a totally different word to mess you up. Didn't prepare myself. But you have to think about, social media is all human. It's, psychology of it. No one cares to listen to some brand spewing anything. No one really cares. But if you add value to them as a human being, they do care. So, we have to change the way we think about these things. And unfortunately, I think there's been some very loud voices that have been guiding people all wrong. And those of us that have been around a long time, shame on us for not getting louder and saying, stop this, stop the madness. There's a lot of things you could do that will actually do wonders for your company.
What do you mean by getting it wrong? What kinds of? Give me one example of getting it wrong.
I think you can look at almost most companies' Twitter accounts. You can look at or their Facebook pages. They're focusing on themselves. No one cares to follow that. It's not interesting. But if when you do shift that focus around, you focus on others. It becomes you're now one of the community.
Yeah.
What brands have been trying to do is be the center of the community. You don't want to try and be the center. You want to be one with. It's hard for them to take, but that's the facts. That's what a social media world is like. And so it is looking at things a bit differently. But I think people are starting to come around and understand that. So I think it's going to get a little interesting as time goes on. I think it's weeding out the people that were doing the wrong things, and now it's the people that have the right mindset is going to take hold.
So you mentioned content, and why don't we we'll take just a couple more minutes on that, and then I'm going to start with questions. Let's talk about content as part of being a brand ambassador. It's either co-creating, creating, or helping to build or to share a message. And that message comes in so many different forms, as you both know, and how we help them create, co-create, share, and do all these things around content is probably one of the biggest roles right now we could serve. How do you approach that? Michaela, maybe we could start with you again. How do you approach content in getting people's buy-in and getting brand ambassadors to become brand ambassadors around content?
Yeah, great question. How do I approach content? Very carefully. And what I mean by that is I don't think that, I agree with you, Frank, that a lot of brands, I believe, put out a bunch of, garbage. It's not very, very good. It's not very interesting. I'm not going to read it. And I think that, we have a responsibility, so long as we're putting information out there, we have a responsibility to make it value added. And I'm actually very proud of the content that our team puts out because it's really solid. And it runs the gamut from, conversations about, for example, thought leadership pieces. What should you think about when you're thinking about building a social business approach to your business? What does it mean to be a social business? Is a business nowadays really just a social business? And so on and so forth. And yes, we do put out content that drives directly back to IBM products. But we also put out content that addresses a need in the market independently of an IBM product. So, for example, there are a lot of questions about how you take a new approach to building, your workforce, to attracting the right kind of talent, and we have an opinion about that. And I think that what's really, really interesting to me is to think about what excites your audience. What are people waking up in the morning and thinking about every day? What do they need? I'll give you an example. We discovered that SlideShare is a really important way of reaching our audience. Maybe 5 years ago it would have been a white paper. Today it's about the 5 slides I need to make a business case. And if you can help me do that, boy, I am just thrilled. Maybe it's about taking something like a piece of research that IBM has done, and we do exceptional research, and really putting it into the hands of the right people in a way that is digestible to them. So again, I think that it's important to take an audience-centric point of view. And my audience is different from your audience, but I think that we have a responsibility to think like journalists. And to really think critically about what we're putting out there and whether or not it's going to fulfill a need. And if it's not going to fulfill a need, and if it's not content that is relevant to the audience, then maybe you should hit the pause button and go back and reconsider, what you want to put out there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's great. Yeah, I think being considerate, especially right now with the amount of content that's out there.
Yeah.
There's so much of it that I think cream rises to the top right now more than anything, because there's so much that there's got to be a quality factor, and the more quality you put into it, the better off. The more likely I'm going to be to read it or share it. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I also think that content is a good way for not just for the brand's values to shine through, but for you to have a little bit of fun with your readers. So if you have permission to inject a little humor into your content, I say do it. Have fun. I'll give you an example. We did a campaign called Connections with Jim, and it was all about IBM Connections, but we created a little like a children's book approach to it. And the character was answering questions, and it was built off of a podcast series that we already had. But it was fun. It was unexpected. Nobody saw this coming. And I think sometimes that element of surprise, that little twinkle in your eye that comes through in the content, is really engaging.
Frank, how about yourself? What's your thoughts and approach on content through brand ambassadorship?
Let's take it to another level, actually. We've heard some of it now, but I'm going to take it from a different brand perspective. Citi has certainly had our challenges, and we've worked to overcome those challenges. Know your brand, know where you're positioned, is extraordinarily important. Let's talk about people who struggled with home ownership and mortgages. A lot of people lost their homes. A lot of people had a lot of trouble. What do you do about these things? Oh, should we push them content to say, here's what you need to do? That's not going to work. You have to know your audience and know what's important to them. So in that situation, we actually did a lot of work for struggling homeowners, but you have to listen deeply to them. One of the things we found out is in the mortgage industry, if you're having trouble and you contacted your mortgage provider for help, I didn't know this before I did this project, you would actually call and speak to a loss mitigation specialist. I don't think a loss mitigation specialist is going to help you. They're about mitigating loss. So
I'm pretty sure I'm going to have to deal with one in about 30 minutes when I get my luggage.
Yeah, there you go. And so what do you have to do? We want to help these people, but they're not going to trust us. First of all, we changed the name of our people to homeowner support specialists. We changed the way they were measured to, this is shocking, supporting homeowners. That's actually part of this content piece. But then, we wanted to deliver content that would help them and actually help save their homes if possible. Well, what do? We partnered with nonprofit groups that they know they could trust. We went around and visited and did programs for not just Citi customers, any mortgage customer that was struggling with any company, and we actually did these seminars to help them in keeping their home, and did them with nonprofit groups. We then also built a website, which is no longer around, but that's a whole other story. But we built a website where they could actually, get anonymous help, where they could talk to each other anonymously. We built it centered on the Livestrong concept. People have been through this, and they can help others go through it as well. And so, this is a holistic view to content. And this is how you have to think about these things. And it all starts with knowing where you're positioned, knowing what your brand is, and what you're striving to do, but also how people would see it from you. I think there's sometimes struggles with that or disconnects. Brands oftentimes think they have a right to talk on certain topics, but maybe they don't. You need to understand where your boundaries are. And if you're within those boundaries, great. If you're not, there are ways to still do it, but maybe it's you empowering it as opposed to necessarily doing it directly, such as the right partnerships. Mm-hmm. So I think there's a lot of thoughts that have to go into all these things. Every brand is very different. The other problem I find in content is oftentimes people are just simply trying to repeat what someone else did. If you see success over there, chances are you're a different brand, different absolutely everything. Don't try and repeat it. Try and be who you are. Stop trying to be someone else. So that's my view on content, and I think that as time goes on, we're earning a lot of that trust, and that gives us a lot more abilities to do other things. And as we continue to do that, and we make sure our content is geared towards helping people, then we can actually become their resource. But we have to make sure we have that trust to be their resource.
That's awesome. I couldn't agree more. I'm going to just start diving into questions. We've got a lot of questions piling up here, and I want to. I'll start at the top. So one of the first questions that came in is from Alan, and he said, "As a brand, what does it mean to appear?" Oh, I like this question. What does it appear to me? What does it mean to appear human? I get to clap for that. Be proactive, engaging, and transparent to build trust. As a question, what does it mean to appear human? Which one of you would like to take that first?
I'll take it. I'll take it in a story that's actually not a city story. It's a Comcast story, but it's extraordinarily powerful, and it will tell you the reason. And I will really describe for you my reasons for my love for Twitter, and when I talk about social as a community. So when we first started the Comcast Cares initiative, it was me doing Comcast Cares. I did every single tweet. And the first, from April of 2008 till July 2008, I worked 7 days a week, oftentimes from 6 in the morning till as late as 2 in the morning answering people. I swore I was going to get the first Twitterverse out there. But one day came along, and I said, you know what, guys? Tomorrow I need to take the day off. I didn't describe why. I didn't get into it. I just said, tomorrow I'm not going to be out there. It was very precisely, it was July 26th I was taking off. And so anyway, the end of that day rolls wrong. I wasn't out there. I go on to Twitter, and I look at my normal Twitter search. One of the things I'll tell you is, which is fascinating, I did my normal search. Oh, by the way, no one knew why, at all. And the reason I took off, I'll tell you that now, was because it was my daughter's birthday was July 25th. We were having a birthday party for her. Fairly simplistic. And the birthday party was July 26th, which was the only day we could have it. But if you Googled my name at the time, especially, it was easy to find, you'd find July 26th was the anniversary of our other daughter's death. And, people found that out, and they assumed that's why I was taking the day off. It's not. And so anyway, at the end of the day, I'm looking through the search, and it says, hey, let's let Comcast Cares have his day. Can I help you? And it was tons of these different things from different people around, the country. Now think about that. At the time, Comcast was the most hated company in America. Yet people felt obligated or felt willing to do that. Mm. That is what social media is about. That is what the power of community is about. And we keep forgetting it, and it frustrates me.
You literally just gave me goosebumps.
That's amazing.
Wow. I'm going to collect myself and ask Michaela what do you believe helps a company or a brand to appear human? I know you've had experiences also with Comcast too, and I think it made you feel like they were a human brand in some aspect. Maybe that's one of the ways. But what do you think?
Yeah. So I mean, first of all, Frank, amazing story. Wow, amazing. Yeah. With regard to Comcast, I did have a Comcast experience about a year or so ago. I worked from home, and my connection all of a sudden dropped. And of course, Comcast is my provider. And so my husband still hadn't left for the day. He calls Comcast and says, hey, we don't have any internet connection. Can you please come and help? My wife works from home, whatever. And the woman on the phone said, yeah, we'll be out in the next couple of days. We'll be out on Thursday or whatever. I have a heart attack because I can't be 2 days without my internet. That's just, it's an eternity for me. So what did I do? I tweeted it out, and I got, the obvious question is, how'd you tweet it out? Well, I got my phone and I tweeted out, hey, at Comcast Cares, I'm desperate. I need help. I can't be 2 days without email or whatever. And my husband, he was kind of a skeptic. He basically said, you're never if they're not going to answer me, they're not going to answer you for sure. Comcast sent someone out almost immediately who spent the afternoon fixing everything. This guy was so amazing. I should add my husband has a PhD in electrical engineering, so the guy knows from wireless. This guy was so good. Jeff, my husband, ended up buying him lunch to thank the guy. Not only that, but he gave us his personal cell phone number in case we ever have another problem.
Wow.
I mean, so things like that really go a long way toward humanizing the brand. But I think anytime, what does it mean to be human? It means to be relatable. It means to be approachable. It means to be fallible. We all make mistakes 20 million times a day. That's okay, as long as you own up to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think brands, it's not that hard. First of all, speak the way people speak. Don't speak in a bunch of jargon, and think about that when you're putting content out into the world. Does this make sense? Is it English?
Mm-hmm.
Is it unintelligible? Do you have a sense of humor? What does a brand stand for? That's, to me, what humanizing a brand is all about.
I love it. I love it. I'm just because we've only got 15 minutes left, and we have probably more questions than we'll get through. I'm gonna jump to the next one here, and this is from let's see the next one from Brett. Is advocacy changing behaviors of customers or moving the business needle? Adding value to your audience. How is it adding value to your audience? So I'll say that again. Is advocacy changing behaviors of customers or moving the business needle? How is advocacy changing behaviors of customers? Frank, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. Well, yeah, it does. And the way you measure it, first of all, now some of the ways to measure it get challenging, and I'm not going to say they're not. But as you start to identify the people that are talking about you, and you can see increases in that, you can actually start connecting it to their accounts and seeing what they're doing with it. Excuse me. Where it becomes a challenge is this data. How long can you keep it? What can you do with it? Et cetera, et cetera. And I think, especially in regulated brands, we're very cautious of that. And so we haven't measured it out as long as we'd like. But what we have seen is those who do advocate typically do have much higher spend rates with us. They're doing much more with their accounts with us. They're much more active. They have more accounts oftentimes. And so these are the things that we strive for. So as we watch that advocacy increase, we actually can see the increase in the relationship as well, and we can correlate the two. And so it is building those advocates. The challenge for us is making sure that we're doing it in the right manner. And this is one of the things I'll tell everybody if you work for a big brand or a regulated brand. You know what? One of the first things you need to do is partner with your legal team. Become partners with them so you can actually build the right programs and the right metrics that A, do not cause any trouble for you, but B, are able to demonstrate those results. And I think by getting that right balance with them is extraordinarily important. Now, in terms of employee advocacy, this is a different one that I'm certainly want to take on. And in fact, my new role, we're talking a lot about it. And as part of that, it's making sure that your own employees have access to your products, have access to be able to utilize them and see the experiences that happen. Because too often, especially in larger companies, people don't connect the dots in all those areas. They don't have the different type of accounts or the different types of products. They never even touch them. And if your employees aren't touching them, then they can't understand it. They can't get a feel for it. In cable, I recently wrote a post about Comcast about some of the issues that they've had recently. And one of the things I talked about was a lot of times their service personnel are now outsourced and with other companies. And I said that's kind of a problem. You need to bring it back where it's people that are living in the same communities. Why? Because they need to feel the product. They need to touch it. They need to understand cable's not working. If they can't comprehend that phone call's going nowhere, and it's not going to be great for the brand. And so the employee advocacy, I think, is actually the bigger topic to tackle for companies. Too often than not, your employees aren't advocating for you as a company. They're not using the product, and that you need to fix. If your own employees aren't using the product, why should any customers? Mm-hmm. So you have to focus on these things, and I think that there's going to be a lot in that area that including metrics that I want to get into in the coming year.
How about yourself, Michaela?
I mean, very well said, right? I mean, yes, it does matter. Yes, it does change behavior. Yes, clients fit into the whole advocacy model. For me, again, it comes down to the fact that your employees are probably your most valuable resource. Walk out the door every night. And you have an opportunity for them to extend their relationship with your brand into their networks. And in technology, we often are working on the bleeding edge. How do I do this? How do I use this cool new tool? Even if I am using it, am I using it correctly? Do I know? How do I benchmark the work that I'm doing? So, I think that being able to have clients who are out there talking about the work that they're doing helps the community. It helps everybody. So, for example, IBM puts out a phenomenal benchmark report every holiday season about what's happening in the online world, and we measure everything. How are sales here affecting sales there, and how is the department store group as an aggregate performing relative to this other group, or what have you. And that kind of information is really important. Because it enables our clients to do more with what they have, and then it positions more and more people to turn into advocates. Hey, did you know you could do this with IBM XYZ suite? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a very powerful thing for people to hear it directly from people who are walking a mile in the same shoes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I keep moving to the next questions, but I want to fit everybody's questions in as much as I can. And this is a really great question. Suzanne Roy said, how would you recommend employees advocate without being salesy or spammy? Employees' audience may not be aligned with the brand, for instance. But how would you recommend employees advocate without being salesy or spammy? Do you want to keep going with that, Michaela?
Sure. I think it starts with the person. So let's just assume that your brand has guidelines, that you've got all the rigor, you've gone through all of the steps that you need to set up a good program, and everybody understands what is okay and what's not okay. I think you need to start with what works for you as an individual. For example, I'm not on Facebook. Now, people always react with horror. What do you mean you're not on Facebook? I'm not on Facebook. It doesn't work for me. I'm not interested in Facebook. But I love Twitter, and I love LinkedIn, and those are important channels for me. They're important communities for me. I get a lot of information there. So if anybody saw me posting something on Facebook about IBM, they'd fall out of their chairs, because it's not true to who I am as an individual. I do certain things and I don't do other things. I never ever tweet about my kids. I very rarely say something about my family, because I keep it very professional and about things that interest me. So outside of work, it's stuff like movies and brands that I love and books that I'm reading or what have you. So I think that every single person, the way you keep it from being spammy is by reinforcing to your employees that the reason we say it needs to be authentic is that whatever you do about on social channels needs to be a reflection of your personality, because the brand ultimately is a collection of the people who work for it. That's my position.
No, that's great. And I always wondered why you weren't on Facebook, so thank you for telling me. Frank, how about yourself?
Well, I think it comes down to, I just want them to be themselves. I don't want them out there hawking products. I want them to be themselves. I want them to celebrate that they do work for the company and be thrilled that they work there. But you know what? They don't need to be going out and saying, here, you have to get this credit card. No, don't do that. Just be who you are. That alone humanizes the brand. That alone connects us to a big company. It's like all of a sudden it's not so big. I know so and so works there.
Right.
And that to me is the powerful statement. So I would urge caution where companies want to force feed to have their employees spamming the world. I don't like spam in any way, shape, or form, no matter how I get it, including from your own employees.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Good stuff. I'm going to keep going here with Brian Fanzo asked a question. How do your companies leverage influencers to understand the brand better? And I'm sure he's talking about influencers as brand advocates or brand ambassadors. But how do your companies leverage influencers to understand your brand better? Do you want to keep rolling with that, Frank?
Sure. There's a variety of ways that we do it. So I'm going to give you two quick things. And influencers, although I'm not a huge fan of the term influencer sometimes, because what influences me may be very different than what influences you. And it very much may be depending on topic, et cetera, et cetera.
I wish there was a better word for it as well.
And I put that out as caution, just, to preface anything I say. But one of the things that we did recently is we had an innovation experience where we brought in people that are really big into mobile app building space. Now, are they influencers per se about credit cards? No. Are they influential about where app world is going? Yes. And we invited them to kind of think through what should the experience be in the future, and did it as a contest to kind of develop this future banking aspect. You know what? It was a phenomenal event, and great ideas came out of that event just by having the right people in the right place to have that conversation and present actually working apps, because they actually could do that with real data in them. So that's one way. There are other ways that you do it, though, are you can have influencers within communities that you wind up supporting, and you actually bring them into your business aspect itself. We're doing this product launch and we need your assistance in understanding, here's what we're thinking as a business, what do you think, what can you help us with? So partner, not just dictate, which I think often too often happens. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that is it's actually then giving them the freedom. Don't sit there and say you must do this, that, or the other thing with it. No, we want you to be a part of it. We want you to feel a part of it. We've done this with programs that we've done. We've done it with products that we've worked on. But the influencers are a variety of different types. It could be, if we're talking rewards, maybe we're partnering with the airline rewards Flyer Talk and bringing some of their people in. They may not be influencers in general to you and I because we're not in that community, but for that world, it's huge. And we also use Communispace for a lot of these things, and we bring in people into Communispace forums to have these conversations. They're private, to make them a partner in various things we're doing, marketing campaigns to product development. You name it, and they could be a piece of it. So it's interesting, but it is a broad spectrum, and that's why the struggle with the term influencer, because the person who asked that may be thinking a very set influencer topic, and I would say it's much broader than that.
And how about yourself, Michaela?
I mean, I think you stated it beautifully. I think you did a great job. I particularly like your point about different influencers influence different audiences. Again, think about your audience. Think about the people you're trying to reach, because the person who influences me is going to be different if I'm looking at a certain program than the person who influences someone sitting next to me. That's really important. I also think that the two-way conversation is very helpful. I learn a lot from talking to people outside of the company about what is interesting to them or compelling to them or problematic about something that we've been thinking about. So it's that constant yearning, that constant quest to improve that I think the influencers can help a lot with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we are literally right at the top of the hour. So I wanted to thank you both for everything. This has been such a great conversation, and you guys will see in the Twitter feed later, if you haven't been following along, the Twitter feed is just going along like a stock ticker. So you'll probably get a lot of tweets that you get to answer back, and I hope everyone out there enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. This has been great. Lots of information, and unfortunately there's a lot more questions that we didn't get to, but those are on Twitter, and I'll let our panelists kind of circle back with you if you guys don't mind, and just connect back. So thank you, everyone, and to Frank and Michaela, really appreciate you guys. We had a couple moments there where I actually teared up. I think that was a first for my my experience on these Google Hangouts. So kudos to building great content here with us on this Hangout, and we look forward to doing it again. Thank you both again, and to everyone out there. Yeah, cheers.
Safe travels.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody soon. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot.